Welcome everybody. We are looking now at the Engen Best Teacher Awards. And with me I've got Abdullah Sujee, who has won for the Grade 11 Best English Teacher. It's wonderful to have you here. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me on this wonderful program, and I think it's an honor being here as well, Janet.
That's right. Tell us about your lesson.
Well, the lesson is based in project-based learning, so that means it has a period of perhaps 1 to 2 years or a maximum of 3 years to achieve its desired objectives. The motto of the classroom for me is the world beyond the domain of the classroom must reach the classroom or must reflect the classroom. Therefore, teaching must be realistic, it must be inspirational, and it must be upbeat to the experience and the nature of the child's world. And therefore, in the teaching of literature, as a case in point, Ellen Payton's Cry the Beloved Country or Orwell's Animal Farm, you'll find issues like oppression, apartheid, racial prejudice is not within the experience of children today, because they are so used to the violence they see on television, and because of the movie culture, they want rapid change all the time. So you find that they do not read the entire novel at all. So to inject the inspiration for them to read, the lesson began with them having to produce an audio production of a theme or issues from the novel or even the Shakespearean work. For example, they had to do a 10-minute broadcast using Microsoft tools, whether it was Office, whether it was Wavelab or Sonic Foundry, and actually do an actual radio broadcast. And they had to use perhaps a theme in the novel or an incident in the novel or the play, and they would actually talk it out with the voiceover and have an advert that comes out of the novel's theme, so on and so forth, or the plot itself, and write a letter to the editor which they speak out. That was phase 1. And then in grade 11, when we did another novel, and I'm looking now at Cry the Beloved Country as well, to give an example. In the community of Roshni at the time, we actually explored the issue of racial prejudice and oppression and apartheid, and we found that the kids had no experience of it despite being taken to apartheid museum and the like. So to concretize that experience, I said to them, look here, you need to interview activists whose stories did not go to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And those activists must be from your community or from the Greater Vaal area. Janet, you'll not believe, they went out searching, and in our community of Roshni at the time, they found a man whom I did not know was a former MK member. And he had a history of having to go underground from this country to another country and learn basically what the MK wanted him to learn. And they got his story, and like that they got other activists' stories as well. We then put all these stories together and we posted it on the blog, valhearings@blogspot.com. If you go onto that blogspot, you'll find all the stories there in raw form. And what happens then, the whole idea of racial prejudice, apartheid and the likes began to be more concretized. We then wrote letters to Desmond Tutu to ask him, look, can't you schedule a meeting with us for us to showcase this Vaal Hearings, to show you that there are so many stories out there that haven't been told by people who have suffered during the apartheid era. And the Truth and Reconciliation TRC, for what it is, has made some inroads into reconciling the nation, and congratulations to Desmond Tutu. I mean, he's a role model for me in that regard. And then the students made inroads, but we were unsuccessful to secure the interview, although communication went that way. Thereafter, the question came about that, okay, each pupil had their own dedicated blogspot, which they posted their extra work on, and I marked it on the blog or gave comments on the blog, so everything was virtual, so you're imitating their world. Now, incidental to this, they started understanding what is podcasting and the likes. And obviously, we had to now filter this knowledge, because it comes from the novel Cry the Beloved Country. We had to now filter it down, or even Animal Farm for that matter. We had to filter it down to the lower grades. So the idea that I gave them was that, look, write books for children using all the Microsoft tools and other programs. Write books for kids on issues like racial prejudice and whatever is a theme from the novel or from the study. that relates to issues that you did from the story. And you could also use the Val Hearings activist story, but tone it down for a grade 1 or grade 2. They got these stories and they managed to give it to 1 or 2 learners and teachers in grade 1. Now what we found, that the grade 1s and grade 2s were now reading literature that had an authentic base. It wasn't fantasy stories. Because it was written at their level, what happened is that they began to understand that there's more to life than fantasy. And that is what we need in South Africa, in the sense that our kids have to be in touch with reality. And yes, with due respect to how we have to teach children fantasy stories and all of that in the grades, but what stops us from teaching them what is actually happening in the world from the perspective of children to children? So that is where we actually began, completed the project-based learning. Now, the part where I could not complete, and that is when I assumed the post at Johannesburg Muslim School, where I'm the headmaster, was the pupils then had to look at this novel again, Orwell's Animal Farm, and extract the major themes, one of which was propaganda, and then actually do a documentary on it, by having to imitate the likes of National Geographic, well, what we have on SABC as well, a documentary and interviews where they had to use video cams and camcorders and all the technology, but they had to infuse it with anecdotes from the story or from the novel Animal Farm. Now that was what they had to do and hand in by October, but obviously it was impossible because I actually came to be a principal at the Johannesburg Muslim School. Now that is what the project is. Now the dynamic part of it is that it is scalable to every community, every school, regardless of how many resources you have or how many resources you don't have. It's a matter of innovating that practice. Given that, Janet, what I found amazing is that the kids actually went back to reread a certain chapter to get clarity of settings, themes, metaphorical language, the nuances of what the writer is trying to tell, and build that into a visual for the listener or for the reader. And that was amazing, because kids began to realize that if you want to work in the corporate world, you need to be sharp, you need to be innovative, you need to be creative. And to get the kids to write the books, obviously we had to throw in some incentives. So a person donated to me a nice little pad, just called an electronic pad, which you write on with a pen, but it stores it in memory, and that was the first prize for the kid who gave in the book first. And the second was for a 3 gig flash drive, or 1 gig flash drive rather, for a pupil who handed in the second. It was a due date just after the first term holidays, second term holidays, sorry, and there you had it, 2 pieces of work on the desk, and you handed these prizes, and you'll not believe how the kids then all handed their work in. That is when I told them that this is how the world beyond the classroom operates. We're giving you incentives, but in the workplace as well, whether you're working for a corporate company or even a small company on the side, if incentives are not given, you're not going to progress. That is why the Engen Best Lesson Awards, the fact that incentives were there, and the fact that we are going to be on TV, people and the teachers whom I spoke to said, wow, it's an opportunity to showcase who you are, but not necessarily in that light, but what you're doing in the classroom, Janet. And I suppose, that is where we can expand on if you'd like to.
Fantastic.